Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Brad DeGraw. Brad DeGraw is a seasoned hard money lender with 9 years of experience in real estate lending. As the founder of All Terrain Capital, he provides funding solutions for land investors who have more deals than capital. He funds a range of deals from infill lots, multi-parcel, transactional, and cash-out refinance. Brad is known for his team-oriented approach, structuring creative and flexible lending solutions for land transactions. Brad will share his insights on hard money lending and how it can be used to advance your business growth. With his wealth of experience and understanding of the lending industry, Brad will provide valuable and actionable tips to attendees. Brad, thanks so much for joining us. How are you this evening?
I'm wonderful. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. I'm super excited because you've been a very active member of our community since we got started. And I just hear so many wonderful things about your services. And now we can finally dig in, get some experience, and hear from a hard money lender how we can grow our businesses as land investors. And so I'm super excited about that. But right out the gate, tell us a little bit about how you got started doing land deals.
You know, I started like a lot of entrepreneurs. I just got started. I picked up a book called Coffee Money Real Estate. It's just one of these little $5 or $10 ebooks, and it had this idea that you could pick up real estate for $50 in Arkansas, of all places. I said, well, I don't know if it works or not, but let's give it a shot. And I ended up buying 24 parcels in like lake communities for $50 a piece. And so before I knew it, I was waist deep into the land flipping.
Wow. Wow. And so when you got started outside of this book, did you have any type of like mentors or how did you learn?
You know, I peeked at everything out there. Like everyone else, I binged the podcast and everything I could find on YouTube and ebooks. And all the big names have great content. So I consumed everything I could get my hands on. And also, back during the previous market cycle, like 06, 7, 8, I purchased single family homes. And so I knew some of what broadly works and didn't work. But I knew that not everything works for everybody. So I wanted to see kind of what worked for me.
Got it. And so single family homes was that actually your first start into real estate in the real estate world?
Yep, that was it. And like everyone taught, you buy it cheap and ugly and you put a little work into it, some sweat equity, and everyone's always going to pay on time and they're always going to take great care of your property. And before you know it, you're just swimming in checks every month. You can't stop them. And that wasn't really my experience. One of the residents burned down the property and didn't tell me. So they don't teach you that in the weekend, get rich in real estate course. What do you do when the house is half missing?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So you did follow a similar path that a lot of people that we've had on this show follow is that they got started in single family homes and then with all of the beasts of burden that single family homes brings to the table sort of guide you into other opportunities, which was land for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there was a couple lessons we learned out of that. Like if it can burn, then maybe that's not really the asset. The asset is the cash, not necessarily the structure from the way I like to look at it. So we had insurance, repaired and replaced the house. And then I sold those properties with seller finance notes, which helped me understand, a new way to be real estate adjacent, have the benefits, several benefits from real estate without necessarily all the headaches.
That's really, really good. All right. So I like that. I like that you were iterating and figuring out like, oh, I like this component of the business. I don't like this. How do I get rid of that? And how do I keep this? That's fantastic. And so you started doing, were these infill lots, these little
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. So I ended up buying a bunch of post-auction properties in Arkansas. And my thinking, I'd look at the map and I'd say, well, there's a neighbor, at least that's someone who might be interested. Also, if there's a neighbor that indicates maybe utilities are available, and so I'd just reach out to the neighbors. And one of the best and one of the worst that helped me move a different direction was I bought half an acre with half a mobile home. And they don't usually sell like that. It's like, think of Swiss cheese where half the roof is gone, half the walls, half the flooring. It was rough.
Wow.
And I sold that thing 3 times and just new headaches and burdens and challenges each way you could, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I realized again, this could work, but it's not working the way it should. I'm going to go another direction.
Got it. Got it. So these, you said you picked up like 2 dozen of these properties. Were they
Yes.
really $50? How much, how much were you paying for these infill lots?
Yes. Yeah. $50 a piece. And so things are, it's a moving target. This was back when everything was on paper. You would, it's COSL, coastal.org would be the website. It's the Commission of State Lands. And you would scroll down till they're highlighted green and you could make an offer. So usually during the auction, the first offer, the opening bid is whatever the back taxes were, plus some legal fees. But after the auction, if no one bids anything, you can write in an offer. And so I just put $50. You had to write out a check and print out a form and mail it. And I print out a few, nothing happened, a few more, nothing happened. And I was probably over caffeinated one day and I printed out a few dozen and I just wrote a few dozen checks and I said, it's either going to work or it's going to, fail, but let's find out for real. And nothing happened. Months later, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden my wife asked me, what are all these $50 checks coming through the account? Well, they started clearing. So I bought them. That's
Wow.
your first notice that you own the property now is the check clears.
Wow. So you had, a couple dozen properties, infill lots in Arkansas that you bought for $50 a piece.
Mhm.
What did you do with them? What it like,
So I've never been to the area, right? So all I know is what Google says and what the county GIS map says. And those aren't always accurate. So I sent out neighbor letters, and that worked about 5% of the time. It works, it just doesn't work all the time with 100% efficiency. So that moved a few. Also, I listed on eBay and Facebook. Sometimes that works better than others. And usually they'd sell between $500 and $1,000,
okay,
which is not all the money in the world, but it proves the concept that you can buy at deep discounts and still sell at a discount with a nice margin in the middle.
for sure, for sure. And so how long did it take for you to dispo those properties?
Um, a few months, I'd say probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So you're selling these properties and you figure there has to be a better way, right?
Yeah,
Or
especially on that one with the half the mobile home. One of the ideas that I bought into is just get a bunch of notes. Sometimes if you can't sell it for the cash price, get whatever they have available for the down payment and the rest can be on payments. Well, the challenge is what I learned is there's A, B, C's, and D's, like in school. If these are B's and C property, or if it's half a mobile home, it's probably not even that. It's a D property. That's the type of finances that your buyer's probably going to have. And so I sold that one multiple times. And every time someone would come back with a sad story, I would just give them all their money back and say, sorry, it didn't work out. Good luck going forward in life. And I realized you are not made for this model. Like you either need to change who you are or the model you're working in. So, I changed my model.
got it. And tell us about that model. How did it come to be? How did you first get started?
Yeah, well, I realized I like doing the underwriting. My personality, it's what's called a quick start, right? I'm easy to get going, but then as soon as I feel like I know what I'm doing and it gets repetitive, then it's better to hand that off to someone else who can keep the machine rolling. So I like underwriting deals and I like finding those high margin opportunities. And I had the money to put into deals. So that makes me a lender, right? I'm great with doing that sort of business.
I love that. So one of the big takeaways from that little narrative is find your strength and find what you love to do and lean in, right? Because so many different components to this business that you can really find your niche and go all in, right?
Exactly. Yep. And because at the end of the day, your business, well, the way I see it, our business is about helping people, finding what's the way that you can keep yourself from having brain damage while you're helping people. And for us, it's just lending.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So tell us about your first lending experience. What was that like? How did you find the first property that you lent on?
In the beginning, it's not about how much money, it's just about proving the concept, going the right direction. So it's a small loan, like $8,000, really small, not even really something to get excited about other than the fact that it proved the concept. So it's an $8,000 infill lot, it was probably worth triple that, but he was going to sell it for double. And I took a look at the market and I realized everybody out there is trying to fund deals as a joint venture partner, basically an equity funder. And there's nothing wrong with any model. It's just, I feel like maybe I'm a little contrarian and I thought we could do better filling in the knowns instead of unknowns. So when I do the rates, it's based on the principal, not an equity spread. So it's cheaper for the partner, the end user who's doing it. And it's less brain damage for me to try to calculate what is the upside. We keep it simple.
I love that. And so, do you remember your first proof of concept that you said, okay, this I think is going to work?
Yeah. We loaned for 8,000, sold for 20, 25,000, and it took maybe 2 months. Well, instead of being an equity partner getting half that big bite of the apple, mine was based on that 8,000. And so I think I made, less than $2,000. It was small, but it proved it worked. And I could prove that, hey, people will come back and have multiple loans and we do a lot of business together and everybody's happy. I do this amount of work in the category that I like and everybody else does what they're good at.
Yeah, the definition of teamwork. I love that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I think that what makes your position so fascinating is the fact that you were a land flipper, like that you did land deals, and now you are lending on land deals. So, can you talk to us a little bit about your business? What type of sort of what that value proposition is that makes you the Brad DeGraw as opposed to other hard money lenders out there?
Sure. For me, what I like is I like filling in knowns. And what I mean by that is the upside really, to me, it belongs to that person who's really running the business, who's out there doing the marketing, hiring and firing, and just dealing with all the things that have to do with the business running well. That upside to me belongs to them. So when I do the fees, it's based on the principal amount lent. And so there's a fee per month, and we don't do any monthly payments. So we want to take the best of a JV partner, right? Like no upfront fees, no monthly payments. I get paid at the end when the deal goes full cycle. And so we can dive into numbers, towards the end or now or whenever. But we wanted to make sure that we were empowering the person who's actually putting the deals together.
That's fantastic. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. That's wonderful. I like that a lot. So talk to us about let's say someone has a deal, right? And they don't know how they can fund it. They need help closing. What do you look for? How do they, what do they need to do? What are the steps? Let's just say someone has never done lending at all. They're new-ish to the space and they have a deal. What's the next step?
Sure. Well, and to me, you have a deal once you have a signed purchase agreement. That's when the deal is a deal. Other than that, you're still in negotiation. You have maybe if you say, oh, I found a seller who wants to sell and they're agreeable, they like me, that's okay, you're close, but it's not really a deal until they've signed the paperwork. And I would say you don't necessarily need to start with me or even a lender. Start with the cheaper money. Use your own money, use your lines of credit, like business, personal, home equity. Your friends and family probably have some savings or tax advantaged account. You don't need to start with me. Or if you do want to start with a joint venture partner, they do take a bigger bite of the apple, but they give you experience. They have a ton of ways to put a deal back together when a deal starts to go sideways. That's where they really add in huge value. But yeah, once you have it signed, you say, hey, I have a deal. I have a little bit of lead time. It's not trying to close tomorrow. It's at least a week, preferably, more out. Um, Send us over your comps, the purchase agreement, and I'll just make sure we're on the same page, right? So if you're comping it and your property maybe doesn't have trees or just a little road frontage, and the comps have beautiful trees and views and great road access, we might have to have another conversation on like, how did you get to this value? Where's your logic? And how'd you get to that number? But if we have the same, basic viewpoint on the value, then introduce us to the title company as the lender. We'll send over the paperwork for them and closing instructions. And usually if it's closing, let's say the following week or later, it's smooth. If you're trying to close in the same week, then you need to be a really great communicator and everything needs to be smooth.
Got it. Yeah. So I think that that's one of the many benefits of working with, working with a lender is that they will always do due diligence as well to sort of double check your homework in terms of if this is actually a profitable deal or not. So if you're not super comfortable with running comps or valuing property, it's kind of like a fail safe, right? In dealing with a lender, if you will.
And that's happened a few times. I've caught things that were overlooked by the land investor. Once, there's water that came through the property and said, if you're planning on selling it to a builder, how are they going to build on top of this, water area? And it turned out the value that killed the exit strategy that they were looking for, and said, hey, do you mind if we throw you under the bus? Like, that's fine. If you need to use me as the bad guy, just, say the deal didn't work because of me. Another time there was a lien. And this is why you work with title companies. Title companies are wonderful. When they have their exclusions, like what's not covered under the title policy, 99% of the time, there's nothing interesting. But once there was a $40,000 lien from a fence company. Well, that's a lot of equity that just disappears. So I reached out to the land investor and said, hey, we can't close this until it gets resolved. See if you can get that released. And sure enough, in a few days, they were able to get it worked out. But that little oversight could be a real big challenge after you close.
For sure. Yeah. So, it sounds like there's lots of different fail safes in terms of partnering with a lender to be able to sort of, get your deal done. Can you walk us through what types of processes you go through in qualifying a buyer or a borrower, in qualifying a piece of property? What types of things do you look for as a lender?
You're asking all the right questions, Kittle. This is why your show's fantastic. For us, lenders think in terms of risk. So there's people, property, and paperwork. So on the people side, we want to make sure they have some track record of success. So if you've had success in infill lots and you're borrowing money on infill lots, great. But if this is your very first recreational property or large acre and you're going to divide it up, we'd want you to be able to team up with someone who has that level of experience. So experience is one, like a track record of a success, not currently in the middle of like a bankruptcy or a divorce. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully everyone's plans in life stay on track. But if your financial picture's in turmoil, that makes it hard to lend. Those are the big biggies. Other than that, we like to see people have a team and systems in place. The better you are at communication, the better your business is going to be. So if you're communicating something weird on the deal, like it says 44 acres, but it might be 75, tell me up front so that if I'm discovering it, I don't have to have this weird thing like, did you know this property has this huge discrepancy? Those things will help create that relationship of great communication.
Got it. And so for someone that's never used hard money lending before, Um, is it based on credit? Is it based on the asset? How do you view that? And can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, that's the nice thing about this type of business is your bank statements don't matter, your credit doesn't matter, last year's taxes, they're not a factor. Really, the underwriting criteria, the thing that gives you credit, is that equity spread. So we like to loan up to 50% of market value. For easy math, let's say the market value on a property looks like it's 50,000. That means you'd qualify for up to 25,000 for the purchase. If you have a contract that says you're paying 30,000 for it, that's fine, but 5,000 would have to come out of, your pocket, and we'd go up to 25. Does that kind of make sense there?
Yes, makes total sense. Now, we've talked a little bit about how newer people who might be sort of newer to the land business, what they can kind of expect with working with hard money lenders. What I would like to know now is, from a lender's perspective, what types of scenarios do seasoned investors find themselves in that when they work with a hard money lender, it's like adding fuel to the fire and it just catapults them? At what stage in their business, what types of deals that a seasoned investor, once they work with a hard money lender, it's to the races with their success?
Yep, I know exactly what you mean by that. The phrase we use is our ideal client. That's someone who they're great at getting deals. They have more deals than capital to take them down. And so if you're choking with deals, you're just drowning in opportunities and you can't get them all closed because you don't have enough funds to purchase. That's where it really, really makes sense. That's where at the end of the year, you're going to say, man, that was powerful, using that little bit of leverage.
Hey, land fans! Looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the OnlyLandFans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at OnlyLandFansGroup.com and join the conversation today. That's OnlyLandFansGroup.com. See you there.
Fantastic. And so is the process the same in terms of how they would, show and qualify and that type of thing? Or, for a seasoned investor versus a brand new person, for example?
Yeah, it's really the same because if you have a lot of experience, great, share it. If you have little or limited experience, that's fine. Share what you have. And then also, what makes your model right for you? Like, what research have you done into that market? Do you have some sort of special sauce, some X factor? Go ahead and sell yourself and your model a little bit, because it's a small enough industry. Everyone's going to work with everyone eventually. So, let's both wow each other.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's fantastic. So in terms of the market that we're in right now, I ask this to everyone because I think it's a very interesting perspective to gain from every guest that we've had. And I'm especially interested to hear from you on this topic. But where do you see the market going? And what do you think land investors can do to thrive in the upcoming market shift?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, always to be asking everyone. We're entering into a place, from my perspective, ask everyone, and you're going to get a variation of responses. But from my perspective, what I see is cash is getting more and more valuable to everyone, both to the sellers, to the buyers, to everyone, which means the land investors that we work with, they're able to negotiate deeper discounts. But on the flip side of that, the same case is true for the retail buyers. They're able to shop a little wider variety of properties and negotiate, maybe better discounts or terms. So just be prepared for, you might go ahead and start offering deeper discounts or negotiate a little harder for that extra time you might be in the deal, or that little bit of concessions you might have to give up to your retail buyers.
Yeah, that's really good. That's good stuff. And so, have you found that there is, are people using more hard money, less hard money right now? Like, what are the trends that you're seeing?
Well, there's a few. Um, the market prices are trending up. So some of that's better quality of deals, right? So some people that we were working with before, maybe they were a little bit newer and more agreeable to properties that weren't as premium as desirable. So we're seeing people focus on more desirable properties, but also paying more for them. Also, what happens is the people we work with within a year or so, they grow and their targets move. So you might start with infill lots, then you're doing recreational properties, then you're doing subdivisions. And at that point, it's probably not the best match to work with me. They're working with, other folks. So we're seeing both of those trends come true.
That is very interesting. Always good to kind of see patterns and see how that's going to affect the market for sure. So, can you talk us through some of the deals that you've done in terms of like a deal review? That way we can kind of see the magic at work, if you will.
Sure. I like to put things in buckets. It helps me wrap my mind around it. So there's three types of property that we see the most success with: infill lots, recreational properties, which are 5 acres or larger, 1 to 3 hours from a population center, and then property on or near water, lakes, rivers, streams, reservoirs. It doesn't really matter. People love water. So those are the property types that we see the most success with. And then the deal structure, there's three: transactional funding, which is fantastic. And this is fairly new to us, but it's basically you have, an A to B, a B to C, and a title company that's agreeable to making the transaction overlap. That's fantastic because now your risk factor as a land investor, it's narrowed down. You've got all the risk zeroed out. So that's exciting when you can do it. You just have to be you have to be great at juggling and communicating, because there's a dozen ways that could get sideways. The more traditional transaction we fund is a purchase. The land investor buys it, hires a videographer, does drone video, maybe does the modest amount of cleanup and puts a sign in the property. Maybe they do an MLS listing, maybe not. And it'll take anywhere from 1 to 6 months, with most of them being like 2 or 3 months turnaround. And they sell it to a retail buyer. And then the last type of funding we do is like a cash out refinance. Someone has a really valuable piece of property with no debt, and they need money to keep their marketing and all the aspects of their business rolling. And we'll say, okay, we can still loan up to 50% of the value and, use that money to grow your business. So we can talk about specific numbers if you like, but those are kind of the three buckets.
Yeah, I definitely do want to jump into numbers, but before we do that, you really caught my ear with the transactional funding and mitigating the risk, and I think that a lot of people listening could really benefit from that. So, can you talk a little bit more about exactly what that might look like? Can you give an example of when someone might use transactional funding
Sure.
to do their deal?
So a good example would be someone needs to sell the property. Maybe they inherited the property, or maybe they have a health issue. One way or another, they'd rather have a small pile of money than that deed. The deed doesn't serve them, but a small pile of money would. And you, as the land investor, have crossed paths. It's probably direct mail, but it could be anything. And you've had that difficult conversation of negotiating. Why don't you want the property? What's the condition? Here's how our business works, and it's going to be a fair price, but not a premium price. And they're patient. They're good communicators. They appreciate that you're there to save them with a small pile of cash. You're not there to make the biggest real estate transaction that county has ever seen. And they're a little bit patient because you've probably explained to them, hey, we have options. Maybe I keep it and hold it in my portfolio. Probably not. I want to see what all my options are. Maybe I exchange it with someone else in my community, and that could be wholesaling. Or maybe I find a really motivated buyer who wants to pay a premium more than what I'm willing to pay you. And that would be where my profit comes from that helps me, do this business. And so you've communicated with them that there's options and they're okay with it. They're not confused and they're not trying to work some sort of a deal where, well, maybe you just pay me payments or something. They understand the transaction is going to happen and it's going to happen in the future because you need time to look at your options and get the best exit for you. Then you go out and you get the buyer, hopefully the retail buyer who's willing to pay, closer to market price. You probably also have a marketing agreement signed, so that if that seller says, well, I didn't know you were going to market. No, you signed it. I explained it. Remember, that's your signature. That kind of helps. And then you also need a title company that understands double closings and is comfortable with them. And if so, great. Some title companies will let you use the B2C funds to cover the A to B transaction. Not all states and not all title companies will. Sometimes, and this is where I come in, you need the money for A to B because that's the way the title company wants to see it to cover this B2C transaction. And the money goes out the same day. It can go in the same day and out the same day. Does that answer the questions? Or
yes, fantastic. And so just for people listening, this transactional funding, this is very, very short-term loans just to be able to get the transaction closed, right?
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. And what is your funding rate for transactional funding?
Yep. So transactional funding, like you said, it can be one day, it can be 1 week because there's always a holiday. It ends up, $4.59 on a Thursday of a 4-day weekend.
Always.
It's 5%. So if you're borrowing, well, I have one on the board for $50,000, that's $2,500. So it's not the absolute cheapest. If you shop around and hunt, you can find cheaper money. But it's better than not being able to do the deal.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Now, let's take a look at some of those numbers that you have now on some of those deals.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So in transactional funding, for example, a $50,000 transaction, let's say that's the A to B. The seller's selling it for $50,000 and maybe they found a buyer for $75,000 or $80,000. That's great. Even though my bite of the apple would be $2,500, there's still plenty of meat on the bone to cover, the title fees. The title company is going to get their bite of the apple as well. You probably had some marketing expenses, whether it was a videographer or a real estate broker. So that's a good example of kind of how that might look.
Really good. Really good. Nice. And do you have an example of your cash out refinance types of deals?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is just a real example. Someone needed more money for their business to grow because you know how this is. It's nonlinear. You send out a lot of marketing. Sometimes it's mail. Sometimes you're trying a bunch of other things. And you'll have some misses, and then you'll have some ridiculous hits where everyone wants to do business with you all of a sudden. And so that nonlinear way of response sometimes means you're going to run out of money. So this happened recently. Someone said, hey, I need money to keep growing, and I have too many deals going. They had a property worth $250,000 conservatively. And I said, great. How much do you need? And he said, well, I need definitely 70 right away. And then I could use some more to keep everything else flowing. I said, well, it looks like 100 is a nice round number. Is that what you're thinking? Yep, great. And so we went through and made sure the property matched up, right? The title work was right, and worked with the title company because they issue title insurance to make sure everything's correct. And easy peasy, they had their $100,000. It came through the title company. We always use that escrow service. And they're able to grow their business. And if that property sells, because that's the collateral on the loan, then at that point, we'd get paid from the title company because that's where the transaction would occur.
Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Fantastic. Very, very cool. And then they have the money to fund their whatever they need to do for their business or the deal. That's great. That's great. Now, can you talk a little bit about, knowing what you know now as a hard money lender, what are some of the biggest challenges that land investors are facing that are a lot easier to overcome with either hard money or anything from your experience as a lender that could really help people that's often overlooked?
Yeah, it's interesting because money is a very old product, right? It never expires, it never goes out of season. So your purchasing power is just one tool in your toolkit. What I'd encourage people to kind of just have a mental exercise, just stretch your thinking a little bit. I'm only one source of money. Sometimes, possibly the absolute best source would be the seller. If you could get the seller to hold on and let you tie up the property while you find that end buyer, great. That's free. There's no interest on that. There's no complication. So some people have had great success in getting long periods for due diligence, or just saying, hey, could I give you an option fee, right? That's a fee for that longer period. Or say, here's a good example of a deal. It's a neighborhood we knew would sell for $30,000 all day, every day. It's a repeat neighborhood. We're doing business there. Well, the seller, usually she could buy the properties for 15, sell it for 30. She had a hard-headed seller that said, nope, I'm going to sell it for 21, 22,000. That's it. But she already had a buyer's list. She already had a proven model and said, well, I'm sorry, I can only go up to 50%, which is 15,000. Could you get the seller to carry back a note for that, $7,000? And she was able to talk the seller into selling it at 22, but only getting 15,000 until she found the second side of the transaction closed. So something like that helps. So again, it's less money borrowed from me and more money or time borrowed from the seller. So
that's very cool. Yeah.
It's super cool.
The creative opportunities out there are just endless, right?
Yep. Especially because, for me, it's a business. And so every dollar, every day, the meter is turning. But for the seller, it's not a professional business. They're just wanting that headache. Sometimes the land is stressful to them. They want that to go away and be replaced with money. And they know that it's going to take a while. So you might be able to get that for free.
That is very cool. Great advice there. What are some other opportunities that you're seeing that exist in the land space that people are not really capitalizing on right now?
I'm a technology dork. I like ChatGPT. I think that's one of the coolest things out there, and just be ready for new innovations to spin off of that. So, consider using ChatGPT for maybe marketing, like write ad copy for this parcel in this county. Or, hey, tell me about the nearby communities. What makes those places interesting to prospective buyers? And so you could have ChatGPT research things that you wouldn't be able to research because maybe it's a seasonal festival and it's not coming up right now in Google because no one's looking for it right now. So think about that. Plug into communities and just keep your ears open for technology and opportunities.
That's really fantastic. I'm a huge AI fan. I think that we're just now scratching the surface of what it can do to help our businesses. What are some other tools that you really like that come to mind in the land space or that help you in your land business?
Anything that can save me, reduce errors or time invested. Um, so, it's not my tool, but I'm a fan of it. Price Boss, for example. We're all using the same data, right? We're trying to land sites or the Zillow, or we're all trying to gather the same thing. But rather than having multiple tabs and multiple screens, having something that kind of collates that data and shows you the outliers, that's helpful. But you still need to, read the descriptions and see, was that with seller finance, or did this have a lot of trees or road frontage? You're still probably going to have to put your eyes onto the words on the screen. But something like that can help collate data is fantastic.
Very cool. Price Boss, right? Is that what it was?
Yep. Yeah, Price Boss.
Yeah, definitely going to check that out. That's amazing. So, what are some of the are there certain entrepreneurs or business owners that you really like to follow?
A little bit of everyone. You obviously. I'm here almost all of your lives. I'm here. AJ and Jason have one that's fantastic. I like the live interaction with people because I think you get more than just reading the book and catching the podcast. So anywhere that there's a live community, I find there's a lot of value there because you can dive deeper rather than just kind of a superficial, glossing over a topic.
That's a really good piece of advice. Getting into those live communities that you can actually have dialogue. And like you said, the books are fantastic and there's so much great content out there. But whenever you can interface live with people, especially within a particular container or community, it's really very cool. What's the biggest surprise you've had so far on your journey in real estate?
Oh, my understanding of the business continues to evolve. What we're doing and how we're doing it. So, for example, on the lending side, who I help is people with more opportunity than capital. And then when I run out of capital, I have to go reach out to capital providers like business partners and say, you know what, it looks like you have more capital than, double-digit opportunities to deploy it. Can we work together? And it's interesting that you're always out there solving problems, but the better you can define and explain and understand that problem, the faster you're going to be able to get to that solution.
That's really good. That is really good. Now, if you could go back and tell yourself 3 pieces of advice as a novice, what would it be?
Get started. Expect that it's going to change, and build relationships. I think those are 3 solid tips.
Those are really, really good. Get started. There are so many people, myself included, before I got into real estate, it feels so good to do all of the real estate things, like watching the shows and listening to the podcast and reading the books, and you feel like you're doing real estate. But until you're actually doing deals, and like you mentioned earlier, getting a deal doesn't just mean you're contacting people. That means you have a signed contract that's ready to go, right? And so taking action, getting started, that is so super important. So completely agree with that. What's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
My wife and I, our way to leave the world a better place is to finance kids' education. So, we think the world would be better with more medical professionals and teachers and educators. And so that's where we put, it's in the background. No one really sees it, but I think that's a better way for us to leave the world a better place. Because does the world really need more lenders or marketers? Probably not. It's not going to be necessarily a better place. But if we had more educators and, medical professionals, that works. And I'm too young, or I've passed the window where it makes sense for me to go to school. So we finance other people's education.
That is very cool. What a really cool way to give back. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so what makes you feel like your best self? Like what area of life, what is it that makes you feel inspired?
When deals come together, it's rewarding both financially and emotionally, but I'd have to lean back into like the kids. Like next year we have 3 kids graduating from medical school, and it's a huge accomplishment for them. And all we did was write the checks.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's very, very cool. It must be a huge sense of fulfillment as well to be able to contribute in that way, you know?
For sure.
Nice. What would you consider your superpower to be?
Getting started. I'd say I'm a quick start. I love to dive into it and figure it out. And then once there's a rhythm to it and it starts to become a system, then handing it off. And my wife is perfect. She has that counterbalancing. She's a due diligence person. So she has that fact finding capacity. So getting started and then handing it off.
That's really good. Getting started, knowing when to get out of the way, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I love that. And so, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for giving to us today. Is there anything that you're looking for right now that we could help you with? Are there any types of connections or resources you're looking for in our community that we could help with?
I'm always happy to connect, just have a one-on-one conversation. If you need a second set of eyes on a deal, it doesn't mean we have to do business together, but if a deal just you're kind of stuck and you want a second set of eyes, I'm happy to do it. If anyone's in the DFW area and wants some Tex-Mex or barbecue, hit me up. There's so many good places to eat here. So I think that's it, just connection.
That's fantastic. And how do people connect with you? Where can they find you to connect with you?
I'm easy to find on Facebook, or our website has a link to book a call. I can put that in the chat. It's allterraincapital.net. And it's not a plug. You don't have to like do business with us, but that's the easiest way to jump into my calendar.
I do have a question for you that I just thought of. What, as a lender in your experience, what's been the coolest deal that you've worked on that you say, you know what, this shows the true power of teaming up with a lender and making things happen?
Just about every deal, we get that, oh my goodness, thank you for being part of this. Without this, we couldn't have made this deal work. Because I think it happens where people think they can have the money together and they don't, or a lender says they have the money and then they don't. We've never left anyone at the altar disappointed, but we've had to save the day where others have said, oh yeah, there will be money. And then, closings at the end of the week and there's no money. So being there right at the finish line with all the money is fantastic. Sometimes a property is really interesting, like the features of a property are interesting. And there's one that kind of stands out. There was a property, I want to say it was in Tennessee. It was like 14 acres, not the biggest. And from the air, it looked like just a prairie with some trees here and there. But it had a subterranean facility, like a 10,000 square foot, like underground bunker. And it was abandoned for like a decade or more. So it wasn't like someone could turn the lights on and use it. But, it was either the bunker for like a superhero or villain. And that must have had a really specific buyer, because you wouldn't just, buy something like that unless you had a plan. And so that one was really, really interesting.
That is very cool. How did you, I mean, I know that part of the process is figuring out value for a property. How did that affect the value? How did you evaluate that?
Love your questions. For us, we see zero value in the structure. And that keeps it simple because it's hard to find another, Batman or Darth Vader, villain cave. So if there's a structure that's half built or, secret facility underground, we comp it as if there's nothing there at all. For one, it makes it easier. And two, it's more conservative.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Not a whole lot of villain layers on the comp sheet out there, but that definitely makes sense.
While they're chatting, I'll give you some more tips just from the lender perspective.
Yes, please.
When you're out there shopping, there are plenty of tricks that lenders can use to make you get excited about some numbers over here or there. Don't worry about percentages. If you're going to shop and try to compare apples to apples, look at your dollars per day. That's how you can really figure out what's your cost of money. So again, don't worry about this percent's higher or lower than another one. Figure out, okay, I'm probably going to need the money for 3 months, 90 days. What are my total cost? Any fees, anything that's going to add into my cost, add it up. And then divide that by the number of days you're going to need the money. And now you can start to compare, because there's plenty of ways to do like prepaid interest or upfront fees that look innocent, but they really change the cost of your money.
That is really good. And I think that's something I know that it can be very easy to overlook and not think about is the cost of money, especially whenever it's figured that way. It's really, really good. Thank you for that nugget. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, Brad. I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time. This has just been absolutely fantastic. If you have not subscribed yet to the podcast, you can do that. We have links in the chat box. You can see our different links, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We also have a website, OnlyLandFans.com. If you've not signed up to be part of our group, please do that. We love to have as many different perspectives in the community. It just makes it a much richer community of different land investors from all different walks of life and all different experience levels. And also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We also do these video podcasts. We have this format on the YouTube channel. And I also have some educational videos that I put out as well that kind of showcases some of the deals that I've done in the past. And so would love to have you guys check that out. As always, so delighted to have everyone. Again, Brad, thank you so much. You're just absolutely awesome. Loved having you. So everyone, be great. We will see you next week. We do these every single Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Be great. Have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next one.
If you're interested in hearing from other 7-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at OnlyLandFans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.